And the stream is live, but we're not ready to start the show. So right now, we'll wait patiently for all of you beautiful people to arrive. So beautiful, all of you.
Well, Brian, I think your theories on the periodic table are very interesting and quite radical.
I'm very glad that all of this was recorded and that Nobel Prize Committee. It's 7708 Thomas Springs is my address.
Check, money order, all's fine. Arby's coupons.
As long as there's $1 million. Let me change the. I'm taking a separate thing and repurposing it, and I think it'll be just fine. There we go, chat. The rest of this I can kind of repurpose on the fly. Let me just crop you. It's a nice crop. Yeah, they're goose suits.
Crop.
It's an old circus term.
Which one do you think's best? Go ahead, Judge. Go ahead, Judge.
He's like, I really don't want to come up. Oh, he's just being shy. Everybody clap for him. He has to come up. Like that was one of the most real things I've ever experienced, because it's that's how it goes when you're doing a show. Is you just announce everybody clap. He has to come up, and then they do. He does.
Yeah. I'm gonna bully you onto stage here.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll give you the camera, and then I'll just fix other things in the background as we move along. But in the very short term, I'll just one camera each of us, and we'll figure it out.
All good.
Okay. All right. Ready? In 3, 2, 1, and.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Adrian Main, joined by Brian Brushwood.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Mr. Justin Robert Young.
Well, hello.
Gentlemen, this is not going to be a political discussion. I'm just going to field an idea for you.
Okay.
Not relevant. We had, for those of you listening, there was a debate last night in the United States. Probably haven't heard about it outside of, a small corridor of American politics. But anyhow, is it time for us to think about Skynet in a positive light?
I was about to say, I was hoping you would bring up the prospect of how far away are we from an AI candidate? Because they already have my vote. And you know how I know this? I'm already in favor of AI voting machines. Like, just watch the way I act, be my advisor, and vote on my behalf in my interests, please.
I think that it's actually a fairly interesting question, especially considering what a lot of people complain about in terms of the worst elements of our democracy, which are like lobbying and moneyed influence and stuff like that, which I think oftentimes gets a little bit misunderstood. Very rarely is a candidate who's totally opposed to something now totally for something because of a lobbying effort. Lobbyists normally just try to educate people that are already agreeing with them on specific solutions that they would like for what they have, which I'm not saying isn't corrupting, but part of that is because a politician only has X amount of time to be up on Y amount of issues. And so they have a very young staff. They're doing a lot of research. But if AI can fill the gap on policy papers, positions, keeping up to dates on certain things that are changing, I do think that there is a huge value in that to better inform not only people in government, federal government, state government, even city government, but also their staff.
I knew a woman who worked in I forget which one of the offices, government offices there, like when they need data and statistics on stuff. And she's sitting there one day and the phone rings, and then somebody asks, how many telephones are there in the United States? And she's like, I don't know, like 110 million, I guess. They go, okay, thanks. Like, bye. 2 hours later, Clinton gets up to give a press conference. You can see where this is going.
There
He's
are
talking about
110 million phones in America.
They watch in horror as the number they just threw out and guessed at is repeated. And it's not. This is every president. Okay, let's make that very clear. It's not a clinic. This is every president. This thing. And that's the thing where you realize, like, there is a bill in California, an AI regulation bill, which is uniformly being criticized by everybody involved in AI, except for maybe some academics on the fringes who just want to kind of shut everything down. It is really bad for open source. It's really bad for developing people, people developing new AI systems. I know people working on systems for doing biological stuff, like being able to predict, protein sequences and stuff. And this would affect, like, federal stuff too, would affect them and slow them down. They're a small company. Yeah. They're not building, agents that are going to run wild and go amok. These are contained systems and stuff doing specific kinds of things. And, I've made the argument that, like, you don't need to worry about the smart models. You need to worry about the dumb models. Much like having a nuclear program, the smart models, the people that can build that stuff, are very heavily invested in the status quo and not having things disrupt things. It's the smaller, dumber things. If you have a system that can design biological warfare agents, a smaller model might be able to do that and might do it unintentionally. All of a sudden it spews out a bunch of prions that are dangerous. A bigger model, like I said, there's skin in the game. So point is, when you look at who advised on this bill, it's just, basically people barely out of college.
Yeah.
It's all theoretical to them. And they're advising on this, a bill that's a horrible bill. And you realize, like, they didn't bring in, like, any real expertise.
I was curious because there was a decision made by our current government to ban exports of our liquefied natural gas, and presumably that's something that's done for climate change reasons. But it was a very curious decision by the Biden administration because they also have a vested interest in Europe, which would be the biggest buyer of liquefied natural gas, especially considering the war in Ukraine, of having them not have to essentially buy Russian gas, but through Turkey usually, which is what's happening now. If we're trying to degrade Russia through a war effort, then you want to make sure that they are not getting money. But I was curious, and I have not yet done this, but using ChatGPT, just saying, okay, please do research on the liquefied natural gas industry globally. And then I'm going to tell you what, if this were to happen, who would benefit? Like who would make less, who would make more, not in a specific what's happening right now kind of way, but just in a, like, top line, as if I were writing a Tom Clancy novel. Like what is the general idea? And I do think that, like, generalized, statistically intensive research, which is a lot of the bulk of especially economics research and big, like, macro issues, I think it could be really, really, really helpful.
Well, and here's a fun other thread we could chase if you guys are into it. It turns out that late 20th century English is going to end up being the most powerful programming language anybody can learn. Because if the LLM was trained on, the last 30, 50 years of whatever, then if you take a linguistics course, the first thing they talk about is how language drifts over time. There's fashionable things that kids, new phrases and all of that stuff. That will actively become unhelpful to learn, because then you'll be less effective as a programmer as you speak into existence the research that you want to have happen. I don't know if I phrased my thought correctly or not. Apparently, I'm bad at the world's #1 best programming language.
Well, maybe you can be president.
Many people are saying.
I spend most of my day now using AI to code, and my argument is everybody should learn to code, even basically because, in a simple level, because when you understand how to get a system to work by providing them the base level of instructions to it, you can do a lot of really cool things with a system like that.
Right.
I think it really primes you for logical thinking and a lot of other things. Not to say everybody who codes is a logical thinker. I don't think that at all. But point is by using text to do that, Brian, you bring this point up a lot. We all become managers, and I basically become a product manager. I'm telling the team, this is what I need you to do. And sometimes that team's GPT-4, sometimes it's Claude Sonnet 3.5, and I have for our audio listeners,
You just got busted. You just got busted giving a thumbs up. That was great.
On. I gotta turn. I have the little visual
It's
things.
in the top. It's in the top bar. In camera, you can turn off reactions.
Good Lord.
I can't wait until I am certain it's already happening. But audio listeners, what happened was Andrew gave a thumbs up, and all of a sudden,
I've seen it on TV.
That's what I was about to say. I'm certain
I've seen it on live television because COVID basically eliminated the need, unless you are a paid contributor, to force somebody to go to a satellite closet.
Right.
Everybody just got used to the idea of Skype's good enough. Put it on your phone. Wear earpods. And,
I think the watershed moment was when that kid walked in during the BBC interview. After that, it's like, all right, we all get it.
If that's fine,
We've all been there.
And everybody's good. But yeah, since then, Apple decided to roll out their new turned on by default reactions, wherein if you give a thumbs up, it'll do a little thumbs up bubble. If you make a heart,
You mean Google?
what was that?
You said Apple or Google?
Apple.
Oh, well, I guess Google got in on the game because this is a Google Hangout.
No, it's
it's hardware level.
yes.
Oh, you're right.
Holy
I kept looking
moly.
At Google.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No,
I
it's
did
Apple.
Did not know that.
You were about to tech it out in the wrong place. Wow.
I've been to every time I go in there, I'm like, what did I turn on? Holy
No.
crap.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's a Mac OS level thing that's turned on by default. Very unlike Apple. The photo booth app was very, very popular for a good reason. It really presaged a lot of stuff that happened on TikTok and Instagram. But that is humiliating and embarrassing for people who use Macs for actual work.
Yeah, I've had that happen in real meetings with people, and I just assumed I had some setting in Google Meet because I never turned this stuff on knowingly.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Sorry, I think we derailed the thread pretty well.
I think,
where
we might
were
have
we?
actually just done a tremendous public service. Because if Andrew didn't know that was an Apple thing, then I will guarantee you that there is a non-significant portion of our audience that has been dealing with the exact same thing and has no idea how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Goodness. So AI, fill planning, all these things, language understanding. I code a lot using AI and using text and voice and stuff. And we are 12 under 18 months away from anybody going in and like Brian, some of the tools I've made for our podcast, we're very, very soon from you going into an interface and just saying, I need a tool to do that and create a panel for me or create a control panel or creating a
Right.
thing. And that's going to be a really interesting thing because when you start talking about building special tools, special stuff, things like that, we talk about like, how do you use this for governance? And part of the problem is a lot of the reasons decisions, things are made aren't because of why we think they're done. If I guess I'd say that like the liquid natural gas is a great example of that where, probably banning the export, that was to appease an environmental lobby that's worried about, how many, CO2 emitting energy.
Right. Which unfortunately and ironically, like liquid natural gas is, this is something I heard from our friend Andrew Heaton on the Political Orphanage. He pointed out like, hey, remember the Kyoto Protocol, the thing that the whole world condemned the U.S. for not signing? We didn't sign it, but the United States has surpassed all of their obligations in the Kyoto Protocol because of one thing, fracking, and with room to spare. So we're going through this like, the perfect is the enemy of the good moment when it comes to correcting climate change.
Yeah, and it's hard because like if you get to the heart, you'll get to there. Like that's where kind of I think AI could in theory be helpful. Is that if you say, okay, we all agree, we want fewer man-made, you know, carbon atoms in the atmosphere. We want fewer carbon less carbon dioxide, less CO2. No,
I mean, and again, like there's the thing beneath the thing. What we actually want is for it to not be getting hotter. And then that introduces very curious conversations about like, well, should we just put up a giant umbrella? Should we?
Well, yeah, and then there is the thing too. It's like there is evidence that says the CO2. Sorry, as I dissembled there, I was reading something about carbon, but CO2. The more CO2 that we've had lately, we actually have gotten greener. But you can say like, cool, and then there could be a point where it's really not a good thing. It could be great. So let's make a caveat there. We have to admit that like, oh yeah, things might be greener in fact because of that, but there maybe not. I think you want to continue. But my point is, we all kind of get to this idea. I think we can all kind of agree, like, yeah, there should be an upper limit for how much CO2 that humans are putting into the environment. Like, let's say that most reasonable people agree with that. How you get there is the question, and that's sometimes with AI. I think that's sometimes a thing because there are some people that think that, well, if we keep taxing conventional, fossil fuels, et cetera, that will eventually make the other things, that while they're less efficient, eventually market forces, innovation, whatever, they'll then catch up. Problem is, it's just my opinion. And again, that's where an AI comes in. My opinion, it just never really works that way. You just incentivize around it and whatever, where if you really want technological progress, you just have a fast growing economy. That's where you get that.
Well, I assume that none of us want to get stuck in the quagmire of talking too much climate change, but I also feel like we're on the same page where what if there's a novel solution that nobody's found the right combination of words to cause most humans to understand? And that is something that large language models and AI can bring up. AI, I think we all agree, has been extraordinary when it comes to brainstorming and coming up with out-of-the-box solutions to things that I never would have thought of. And then and maybe 9 out of 10 are dumb ideas, but then that 10th one, it's like, oh shoot, there's something here.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's going to get to is that I'm going to have my biases. I'm going to have this stuff, and I'm going to be leaning towards AI that agrees with me, but we have a wonderful way to measure if a system is too biased, and that is its ability to make predictions. And if you have systems that you can then say, okay, I want to put my trust in you, but I need you to make predictions. Once we'll do historical predictions, measure it, and then going forward, and that becomes a way that you can sort of determine that and take away your own idealism or bias or whatever out of there. And I think that's what's going to be interesting as you start saying, okay, I'm going to build a really complex AI prediction system that's going to predict what's going to happen in scenario A, scenario B, whatever, and then kind of scale from there.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of sorting and contextualizing, and all I would say to anybody listening to this is take advantage of it now. Like we're in a golden period where not a lot of people know that you can just do this stuff. So like, just go. Run as fast as you can.
This is it's a dumb example, but I think it'll be easily approachable to everybody listening and all three of us. You get off a plane, you're waiting for your bags at the appropriate bag location where they're supposed to come out. You notice first that there's a little alert that says, yeah, it's the other place now. You look left, you look right, you realize nobody's moving. And now, but something that is a fact. Your bags are not going to come out here. They're going to come out over there. Simply by paying attention, you get to walk over and get your bags first. That is the exact moment that we are at when it comes to AI. And a lot of people are deliberately not engaging with it. I'm not talking about my 3 beautiful daughters, but hypothetically I am. I wish, if you are hearing our voices, I think it's fair to say that the 3 of us understand that there's no putting toothpaste back in this tube, that this is happening, and the kindest thing you could do for yourself, for your family, for generations after, is to know more about it in a visceral way by putting your hands on it and using it and trying it and doing things and understanding the underlying construction of it than virtually anything else. Like all schools should do nothing but teach people how to use AI is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then the plus plus with the luggage is to go look at where the chutes are, and the plus 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 is to look at which way the metal plates are aligned on the conveyor, so you know which way.
So you know what direction it goes. Yes, yes, exactly. But you guys, it sounds like that's a good enough metaphor to land.
Yeah, and I think that I will say I'll defend when it kind of I'll do a light defense as sort of some of the creative criticism of AI generative content is that too often I look at it as a consumer of content saying I don't really care if it's good or not. As a person who likes to create and write, like if I know that my days as a novelist may be numbered because of AI, that I think I can still have an audience, but like I've watched with other technology impeding, magic DVDs and the cruise ship industry or whatever kind of stuff, I know that there's a time limit. I get a period to enjoy it, whatever. So I've lived through that and I'm comfortable with that. I think for a lot of artists who enjoy the act of creation, it is scary because on one hand, the idea that you press a button and you get a thing that's as good or better than the thing that somebody struggles on is disheartening. And to tell somebody, well, you should just enjoy the act of creation for itself. It's like, well, I got in it for the attention that I got from it. But I think that we're seeing this. We talked about this. They just did the company that owns the name Toys R Us. They just put out you see the commercial they did was using Sora.
No, I didn't.
So they did it.
Tell me what to search for.
Yeah, to Toys R Us Sora. And so they put out a commercial using Sora, and it's a great commercial. I think if you didn't know that it was AI generated, you would think, oh, it's just VFX and all that, but it was actually, I think, mostly generated by Sora, probably with some other compositing in there. And that, of course, created an outrage because of and I'll tell you kind of a slightly ironic story.
Do we want to watch it's 1 minute long.
Sure.
Okay, we'll watch the whole thing here. Here we go. I'll turn on the audio.
To our audio listeners.
Classic Americana, 1950s automobiles abound. A place says bicycle shop on it, and audio is this.
Toys R Us and Jeffrey the Giraffe came to be. The son of a bike shop owner, Charles Lazarus, had a
whole bunch of very photorealistic humans, all well lit
in 1950s land.
Yeah,
vision that would go on to change toy stores forever.
Kid waking up, seeing stars swirl around him.
This one's a little bit uncanny valley, better, Pixar level animation. And now we're into total. Everything's clearly CGI.
Wow, that was
But
great.
the kid looks real. The kid looks real.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, you got animated toys and everything flying around him as he goes into walking through this magical glowing toy store.
And a very, very consistent Jeffrey the Giraffe throughout the entire.
Toys R Us was the dream of Charles Lazarus. May all of your
Now that's a
dreams come
real
true.
photo, I believe.
Yes,
That was a.
And the dream continues on.
So-
with Toys R Us at every Macy's.
Like it's not that people didn't work on this. I mean, like humans got together in a room and waved their hands and said, "What if this? What if that?" and so
They
on.
did not cast an actor. They did not hire VFX, the team that they would normally hire. They did not get locations. They did not get cameramen. They did not shoot. And, they
Well, and
I'm going to take a wild guess that this was probably done outside of a union.
Yeah. Yeah. If
So,
the thought I remember having is if you are a mechanic of any type, by which I mean somebody who is ostensibly in a creative field but basically input comes in and things go out. Anything from you write scripts mechanically or you write contracts mechanically or whatever. That is it may be time to rethink your position in the face of AI. That's the only thought that I have about this.
Yeah. So, unpacking several things here is that if people didn't know that it was AI generated, I doubt that anybody would have noticed or said, "Hey, this is AI generated." This thing looked, like a commercial, like many others. I think that for the problem is that it's fine to say, again, I'm not going to be arbiter of what people can or can say. In my opinion, everybody can have a take on this, but when you make the argument like, oh, it devalues this or whatever, and like you hear people, criticizing, and Ashton Kutcher made a very, very sincere comment about Sora and how it's going to replace a lot of things, in Hollywood and stuff, and all this outrage about, well, people do this, people this. Like, you're talking about an industry that is producing less and less because of the costs and competing and losing to a global market for stuff. And when you're arguing to say, no, you shouldn't be able to use this, what you're saying is, no, you have to spend as much on this thing as possible, which creates a situation where you end up maybe with fewer people working in the industry because, you know what, maybe we could build this, we could create a great, 14 episode Netflix drama or whatever with a lot of cool VFX if we use AI. But if you're like, nope, you have to pay for VFX artists. Well, guess what? That doesn't exist. That show doesn't exist anymore.
Well, and I think people are beginning to wake up to the idea that the final draft, will not be made by Sora. With this, obvious example notwithstanding, but the behind-the-scenes prototyping. What if by tomorrow I could get you 10 different pitches for a Toys R Us ad, and you can pick which one is the one that needs that human touch to it.
Yeah. But we're only a few short steps away. Then you just press the button, you get the thing. Though I do think that you'll get to a point where you can have AI do the creative output of a creative team. I do think that will happen, and I can't pretend that that's not in the timeline. What happens, like we talked before, Sora is hard to control. These things are hard to be steerable, and I could tell you little artifacts I watched in the video, going, oh, they probably couldn't control for this. There's a thing with Jeffrey at the beginning; he's like a weird ponytail thing, etc. But these things are moving so fast, and there is really good steerable video generation is further out than a lot of people think. But my point I'd say is that, like, if I talked to a woman whose husband worked at Pixar, and she hates the AI stuff, and she's like, it's taking my husband's job and this. It's like, and I was kind of like, lady, your husband is a computer animator.
Yeah.
Like, there are a bunch of dudes in Burbank who don't have jobs anymore because of Pixar.
Yeah.
Like, that's why do you get to say no? The thing at which I reach the highest level of income is where things have to stop. We don't get that. And also means that, in the long run, I was watching a video talking about, like, all this crazy weird short form content now, like what's happened with, they take these like really trashy sort of short novellas, pay per chapter thing. And now have you seen this where people are actually like doing, like, creating TV shows and stuff on this?
No.
No. But if there's an example I should Google, then I'm here for it.
Let me pull this up for you right now.
Okay.
Go to Google, go look for,
I love the fact that we're literally in this moment, living a moment where if an AI producer bot was just watching us, it would already be found and our show would be better. But instead, I'm going to type words in Google.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a story of a guy that was so fast at this. Legend tell. I don't know. It's been so hard in the back. I don't know if he was real. So let me look for one of the companies here is, because we talk about like how Quibi tried this thing of trying to do short form content. Okay, Real Short. Go look at ReelShort on YouTube.
Okay, on YouTube specifically, or there's realshort.com. Just watch it. It's Real Short is the tagline. And when we go there, It says most trending. I'm going to click the double life of a billionaire. I'm going to hit play. This is the breakfast. Wes Starling, I want a divorce. Low class gold digger.
Family anyway.
At least I'm not a cheater.
I never cheated on you. You know, Wes Sterling, I was really impressed when you married Kira. You've never been honest with me.
Wes is right. I am hiding something from him.
Sorry for calling this late again.
Is this all AI? Because
No.
Miss Murphy, you
Okay.
are one of our most
It's L.A. It's non-union actors. It's very poorly written human scripts.
CEO of Murphy Cosmetics.
What are you doing here?
I mean, it could be AI for.
So wait, hold on. So are these being taken from like
Keep the money.
stuff online already? Like the stuff that people are these being adapted from?
Yeah. So there's
That's
these there's a whole
brilliant. That's
there's a-
actually kind of brilliant. I'm
there's
into
a whole
it.
there's a whole genre of like really short form episodic stories, like remember Wattpad, whatever.
Yeah.
So like in China, that was huge. And so like you write a 600 word thing, and somebody buys the next one, and the next one, the next one, right? And so those companies have now been shifting into turning these into video productions where they go hire. They pay an actor $300 a day. They get like 10 actors, pay them $300 a day. They get 1 or 2 locations. And it's always like my billionaire boyfriend,
Yeah.
And it's all like 50 Shades of Grey, but softer, whatever kind of stuff. And so that's what they do. They're super cheap productions. They maybe cost $150K to go do this. The total running time, if you add them all together, might be 2 hours, but you pay per like 4 or 5 minute episode. Now look at the titles. Read the titles here for us.
we got Baby Just Say Yes. We've got The Double Life of a Billionaire Heiress. We've got You Belong With Me. Number 4, All the Wrong Reasons. Number 5, Who the Heck Did I Sleep With? Number 6, Knight in Shining Suit.
Now that sounds like a ChatGPT title.
Number 7, Fated to the Alpha.
Oh no, she's faded to the alpha, Bri.
All right. The formulaic comes to mind. In Love with Dr. Baby Daddy.
That's great.
Duke with benefits.
So
We are never ever getting back.
when we worry that my criticism is like Hollywood and artists often are looking in the wrong direction. The things that they worry about. And I'd say that I don't know that these things are really taking over, but I would say that they're kind of like the mobile gaming version of entertainment. And there's a lot of these forms of stuff that's creeping up. And I think it has I watched a video where like, oh, this is predatory, it's wrong. And I'm like, no, it's like people can not buy an episode. If they're that hooked into it, it's fine.
So you're
Yeah,
not going to
whatever.
be watching Falling for My Divorce Lawyer?
Brian, I'm going to be writing this crap. Are you kidding me? I'm launching my new studios,
Homie, I feel
Bad
like
boy billionaire productions here.
how have we not adapted 50 Shades of, or the Diamond
Diamond Club, yeah.
Club, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to adapt that post haste. So this is the same economic model, like you are buying one episode at a time in the way that you would be buying one chapter
Yep.
at a time.
It's in an app. You go into your app, your phone, whatever, and then you pay and they use tokens and all the other sort of garbage ways to sort of manipulate you into buying more. But you pay for tokens. They put the first few episodes on YouTube, and it's funny, like they're produced in LA. These are people that like that phone call was either going to put them on a porn shoot, or on this shoot, and so they ended up doing this.
This is amazing.
It's amazing that they are rich in young, beautiful people,
Humans.
that can credibly act in a script of this caliber. All they have to do is look at each other with smoldering eyes and sometimes kiss.
I watched like some clips from some of his actors. Like they're perfectly fine actors.
They're
perfectly
great.
good
Yeah,
actors.
no,
it wasn't like Oklahoma, public access theater. It was like these people are like these people just never got a shot in something else because there's just not enough opportunity.
The call boy I met in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh no, I slept with my husband. Waking up pregnant, my double life as a billionaire husband, BF for hire, a secret billionaire heiress, I got married without you. These are amazing titles.
These are just
These are amazing titles.
It is just female wish fulfillment bingo. Like you just scramble that board and these titles fly out. I love it.
OMG, you're my baby daddy.
Oh no, look, it's the Alpha's daughter. That's got to be a sequel to Faded to the Alpha.
Miss Swan, teach me love.
Oh, yeah. This is incredible. Good on them. Unexpected divorce. Oh, that one will sneak up on you. Cross my heart and hope to die. There's a bullet hole in that.
So now,
album
would
art.
you imagine, Andrew, that something like this would be a place where you would see generative video and generative writing kind of hit traction?
I think that we're ways off from being able to reliably replace the actors. You know, we can see a couple 2 seconds of an actor, but we have yet to see an engaging scene of AI actors talking to each other in a scene. It hasn't happened yet. There's certain benchmarks I have with, like, I've yet to see a really good 500-word AI written short story. I think it's totally possible. We just haven't had that.
Yeah.
For this, next steps will be, from a production point of view, is one is, like writing, but using AI to write better stories, better scripts, whatever, to be analyzed. You know, they might be using that for now to try to write stuff, but writing, AI writing the screenplays to be able to do it. Going and just shooting it all on green screen, because right now they're shooting in real locations.
Yeah.
And green screen has a lot of limitations to it, but you can start to do interesting things now with like green screen, separating, moving characters around, whatever. I think their pipeline is, they probably have a very efficient pipeline of how they go in and shoot, don't have a whole lot of post, etc. So I do think that you'll see a lot of things in there, like go look at The Little Witch. Like, let's see, like that looks like it's a high production value thing. That's the upper left corner.
I'll click it if you want, but it's hard for me to pass up the ex-wife unaware I am the Dragon King. But sure, we'll click on Little Witch.
This thing looks like it's got, like they got some bigger shots and, they
some
found,
costumes.
Little CGI.
Yeah, they found
this guy hates witches.
Yeah. Oh, you should point out too to everybody, this is shot vertically.
Yes.
So, what helps too, this is a great little technical point, because it's being shot for the phone, is they can shoot super close. All these things are medium shots, close in shots and stuff. And so you don't need it's all shot in like a house, all shot in a house or a simple location.
Well, I'll tell you what, we did find a way to cut that budget, huh? We got him out of medieval times and through a time portal where he's now living in
LA.
He's now living in modern times LA.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, it's hard for me to really even bag on this because, for example,
that's great.
There was a time that people were talking about digital effects ruining magic, and instead, digital effects became their own branch of magic, where it's like there's a class of magician that entirely works their magic in pre-production and post-production and not necessarily live in the moment. And I think the art is bigger and better for it.
Yeah, I think that this is just, if I'm going to be critical of this, then I need to be critical of somebody sitting down and playing Call of Duty for 20 hours. Like I would say that we have different ways of of passing our time and whatnot. But when we talk about like where technology, this is certainly, and I don't know how really popular these things are or not, because part of the problem with some of these content systems, like I saw some like online book publishing platform got a big funding round from investors who are generally smart. But I think I told you this, I looked at their app store likes and reviews, and they're all the same. All literally, it was clearly a bot, clearly a pay for whatever sort of thing. And that's, I wonder some of these things too. Like, I don't know if they're actually making money. It's a question where it can be a thing that people think people are making money there, but
Yeah,
Maybe
because
not. I don't know.
a clever business model may not be an efficient one, and this is obviously targeting a certain demo of which I don't know how many VCs or tech journalists are necessarily a part of, but you can easily say, oh, well, that's branded toward women aged, women and girls from like 13 to 45. I'll bet you they're eating this up. And if you're not a woman between
Well-
those ages that would be into stuff like that, then you would have no idea.
Yeah, a little backstory too. Part of what started the development of this here, where you had Chinese companies that had these, were making. There was a very huge industry in China with these short form novels and this content, and then China cracked down. China said, no, this doesn't reflect our public interest, whatever, and blocked them from China. So then they started pushing the stuff overseas in the U.S. And we might be in a phase right now where, like some of these other companies like Temu and whatever, they're not profitable. They're just throwing a ton of money at trying to capture a market.
Right. I always think of that. My shorthand is thinking about how Uber, broke taxis, and then we found out, oh yeah, no, because they were losing money constantly, they were overpaying for everything, and that's why Uber was so pleasant.
Yeah, I'd say Uber's now pretty profitable, but Uber had so much inefficiency in there, like literally trying to develop flying cars and self-driving and stuff. Like Uber I think has been profitable last couple of quarters, and there were a lot of inefficiencies there. But then what's happened too with a lot of the regulations and stuff put in place about having to pay drivers, et cetera, and that's a whole nother discussion on that.
Well, hey, I know that we only have Justin for looks like 9 more minutes. Do we want to push forward on the picks?
Yeah, let's do picks.
Justin, we'll let you go first if you have to bolt.
Oh boy, what did
Is it the debate last night?
You can if you like that politics. If you want to listen to me in real time, watch that debate. Oh boy,
Justin,
is it a journey?
Very rarely have I listened to one of your podcasts and felt like you were shook. The last time was when you found out that maybe your dead dad was alive.
True. Yeah, that was probably. Look, a lot of similar themes: life, death, age. So there's that. I'm trying to remember what we watched on. Oh, we watched the first episode of The Bear, and I liked The Bear. It is certainly fun, well stylized. I thought for a pilots are always really interesting to watch because sometimes they're not the best representation of the show going forward, and sometimes you can tell that somebody spent a lot of time working on this script because it's very interesting and elegant in terms of how things are brought up. This was the latter. This one felt like, oh, there's a very realized story here, and the characters that were introduced really, really carefully. So I have no other thoughts on The Bear other than I watched the first episode and liked it, and then I watched the first episode of Echo, and action's great. I'm just gonna say this is not a problem with the show that obviously focuses on a deaf heroine, but when there's not a lot of dialogue, boy, when you're just sleepy people, when you're a sleepy man at 41, is it easier to go to sleep when nobody's talking? So I conked out.
I was really, really surprised that Inside Out 2 bothered to be better than the first movie. It didn't have to. The only thing I didn't care for in Inside Out 1 was that they had to explain to us the fairly obvious trope of what if your emotions had personalities in your head and whatever. They pretty much just whiz bang through that in the first 3 minutes, and then they're like, what new emotions would show up when you hit puberty? And I liked it a lot. It was better than it needed to be for what could have been a naked cash grab, and that's my pick.
This one was appropriately dressed cash grab.
Yes, correct.
It was wearing a uniform, and you felt like, oh, I want to give this person money.
Are you making a specific reference?
Nope.
Okay.
I just really like the idea that a naked cash grab, weird. Why is this naked person
well-dressed
demanding money
cash
from me?
grab.
But a well-dressed cash grab, you're like, I should be giving this person money. Look at how well they're dressed.
You know what? We'll stick with this metaphor. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
A well-dressed cash grab.
It's a well-dressed cash grab.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sure it's great, but I'm not excited to go watch a movie about my emotions. Sorry.
He doesn't like them normally. Like, he doesn't need them dramatized.
I don't need them. They're no use to me. But yeah, I loved Coco. That was 7 years ago. I think that's last time I'm like, oh, I'll go see this. It's really cool. And Pixar's very much, I'm very glad that they're in touch with themselves and taking their therapy sessions and making them into movies. That's good for you guys.
Yes. I will admit that, boy, oh boy, do they like making the same movie again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the Pixar twist, there's a, kind of a thing that happens there too. This is a mixed pick. I enjoyed it because it talked about an interesting thing, but I was very frustrated by it. And that's Iron Claw. That's the story about the Von Erich family, the wrestling family. And I held off on seeing it for a while because the writer director made a choice. It's this family of Texas family brothers, wrestling family. Their father was a well-respected wrestler, had several sons that went into wrestling, many sons that went into wrestling, and befell tragedy after tragedy. They excluded a brother. They wrote one of the brothers entirely out. I mean, they mentioned a younger brother who passed early on. There was another brother, spoiler alert, a lot of suicide in the family. And they wrote out one brother because he had a suicide very similar to another one of them. And when I heard that, I was bothered because that's erasure, and I don't think that was necessary. I understand that maybe you think that the writer felt that complicated the story, but that is the story. Yeah. That is the story. It's like, you know what? Let's do Holocaust, but fewer victims. No, you don't do that. Let's do Ted Bundy, but what if he killed men too, or whatever? It's like, no, like this was a person, and watching the writer, and maybe it was out of context, but kind of sort of blithely saying, well, his story was just like so and so. So I'm like, this was a living, breathing human being. This was not a character in Game of Thrones that you consolidated. That bothered me. And again, I've never dealt with the complexity of telling a story like that. And they went to the spoiler surviving brother and said, hey, they said, we went to him late in the process to tell him we're going to do this. And he was okay with it. And like, he's the most mellow, chill guy. Of course, what's he going to say? No, stop the production, which I thought was just Hollywood sneakiness, not really being fair kind of thing to me. I didn't feel good hearing that. Watching it.
Yeah, finish it. Finish your thought.
Watching it, I felt like you never got a sense of how popular the Von Erich there was. They did the one thing is they show the funeral procession because when their funeral processions were tons of people showed up, would like huge. They were superstars. They were doing local TV commercials and other stuff. Other than seeing a wide shot of a funeral procession and people saying that they're famous, you get no sense of that at all of what they really meant. And I felt like that really is, my wife's watching this. She's like, were they big? Like, yeah, they were huge there.
Massive.
They were huge there.
In Dallas, yeah.
So,
yeah, I've not seen it yet. I heard, a lot of the praise for the movie came from the performances, and obviously, who's the lead actor that plays
Zac Efron?
Zac Efron did like a full body kind of transformation to play Kevin Von Erich.
He's the only one who did, by the way. The hard part too is the other actors in there are just
didn't bulk up in the way that Zac did.
Yeah, one of the brothers, like they show him. I'm like, he looked like he spent 4 weeks in the gym before we're going in there, and looked nothing. And you're like, it was hard to take it seriously to go like this. Again, it's not like necessarily they had necessarily Marvel money. You can say we're going to put you in training for 6 months and get you into shape for this, but it hurt.
It is the challenge of telling a story like that. That question is a big decision that we deal with World's Greatest Con, where we're telling it's infotainment. People trust us that the facts we are telling them are facts in real life. And at the same time, you got to tell a good narrative. This is a storytelling podcast. It's not a history podcast per se. So we are giving ourselves a little bit of leeway to, shade it. But you have to owe to the truth. And if you are not owing exclusively to the truth, and part of a story about lies and cons requires that you take the audience on a journey where sometimes you are being lied to, you have to have a philosophy with it. And I can understand where if you're just doing a stylized story that was inspired by the Von Erichs, then I think you get more leeway to kind of do things in a different way. That I think it looked like and was sold as, and it sounds like what you're telling me it is, endeavoring to be, this is the dramatized tale of a larger than life family that suffered unimaginable tragedy. And in that case, it's kind of gross to write out one of the brothers when the whole point of the spoilers for the Von Erich story, but it's a lot of family trauma and death. Like it is the saddest story in wrestling for a reason.
Yeah, and I think the hard part was I could tell they had trouble figuring out the point of view for the story. We follow Zach Efron's The Surviving Brothers sort of story through there, and then it's a tale of survival and what we get a moment where he just sort of, okay, I guess this, but not a real. The story's sort of lost.
And it's a hard story. It is a hard story to tell. There's not. You've got a bunch of repressed Texas boys who are not exactly the most emotive human beings on the planet, that are in a very weird industry that is prized on secrecy, that builds walls emotionally and physically from its audience, and yet interacts with it like they're larger than life superheroes that have all of this really dark family stuff continually pop up.
And when they talked, there was an interview with the surviving brother on the runway, and he said, well, you have to understand, my dad was he was hard on us, but he was like all the other Texas dads. They went through the Depression. He says they were all like that. On the football team, they were all like that. And like that was saying that's kind of your story there, is this generational thing of people who went through this certain hardship and then trying to, and the mother is the mother, and I don't know how intentional this was. It's kind of like Spielberg's movie where you come away, the mom's the villain. Here, the mom is just not present. The dad is super harsh, but man, he loves his sons.
Yeah.
He loves his sons. And that's the thing that I thought they did do a good job of kind of the complexity of that, but it was really hard to kind of go well, what's this about? It's bad luck.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. The Iron Claw.
Gentlemen, what a crop. It's been weird.
It sure has. Hold on. Everybody take more time saying goodbye because I have to find where the cursor is. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Farewell.
Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
Nailed
Which for Fritz Von Erich, that makes sense.
All right. So Justin, you have to bolt, right? Okay. All right. Well,
see you, boys.
I'm gonna go pee and play this chill hop for a second, and then we'll do after things.
Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing.
All right.
Dueling chill hop.
Dueling chill hops. There you go.
I think it would have made a cool Netflix series, and maybe about the whole like. I think if you made it kind of about that the wrestling scene in like the 80s in Texas and stuff like that. You know, I think it could have been a great story with another story, but by itself, you know, you really got to focus on the one brother, the surviving brother. You really, which they did, but kind of, we never got a lot of the other brothers.
Whoops. I left the music too loud, I guess. There we go. So I do have a thing. I can carve out 20 to 30 minutes, if that works for you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you on behalf of all of us for being so generous with your time.
Okay, look, you know the struggle is real. Come on.
I know. I was talking to somebody last night, like, you know, when I was young and single, life was less complicated.
Yes, it turns out when you owe nobody anything, life is very uncomplicated.
Yes.
Then you make promises your whole life long, and then you have to keep them.
I was using the description of like how our cells over time accumulate things. Like as we get older, we just accumulate complications.
Yes. No, I think that's accurate. In fact, maybe that'll be what we talk about. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by the only co-host that matters, Mr. Brian Brushwood.
Man, remember when we considered having a third co-host on this part of the program, and we wisely decided that would be just silly?
He's going and doing his own shadow show somewhere else, and debating us while we're here, I guess.
Yeah. So what do we want to cover? For anybody who is... Oh, I guess there's a non-zero possibility that somebody is hearing this portion of the program for the very first time, in which we peel back the curtain and reveal the truth about what it's like to be an independent creator and how you can do it.
Yeah, so today's topic is going to be what happens when you jump into a show about being an independent creator without a prepared topic.
Without any preparation whatsoever. Now, many people would think that that's not possible. That would be irresponsible. It would be a dereliction of duty. But we intend to talk about how you can make that successful. First of all, you should trust your co-host. You should immediately...
It's a 10-step plan. Yeah, Brian, do steps 1 through 9. I'll do 10.
Okay. All right. I am really sitting lately with the fact that once you've built up your engine of creation, I assume this is true for any type of art or any type of creative creation, anything, whether it's engineering or you name it, like all that matters is move. Like the more you move, the more you show up, the more you just do literally anything, the better off you are. And when I look back over the last few years, we went through COVID and many of us had tragedies and so on. The times that were the most vexing for being an independent creator were the times I felt most paralyzed and just didn't do anything. And as I have moved beyond that and realized that there are no wrong answers, there are no bad outcomes, there's just outcomes and you figure out what to do with those outcomes. Just go is what every day I'm feeling that more and more and more.
I've been was very lucky to watch one of the most successful entrepreneurs of the 21st century up close and see how he operates. That's Sam Altman. And you quickly realize that somebody like him has made a very different stuff than I am. And so, there are only so many takeaways I can perhaps take, when you realize, no, this person's just operating at a different level. But one of the things that I've observed and I really appreciate about him is he has extremely high bandwidth, right? And his ability to make a decision. There are some decisions we postpone because they're uncomfortable, or, you look at your inbox and you're like, I have to think about this question, so I'll put it off later. Well, you're putting that debt into the future. You're counting on the idea that in the future things are going to be less complex, not more complex. In reality, the moment you open an email, open a thing, you've got to be prepared to handle it there and now.
Well,
Sam has.
There is I would say let's stick to this thread, but internally, I fall for the delusion of, oh, everything is foggy about this. Over time, it will become clear. And what you're describing from somebody who is much more successful than I will ever be is don't wait for the fog to clear. Be the one who just decides a thing.
Right, because your ability to survive in a dynamic environment is based upon, as you said, activity, taking action. Doesn't mean making a bunch of stupid choices, but being able to make good enough choices. I watched years ago. I worked for a very, very smart person, another very smart person who was incapacitated by decisions, and then would delegate them to incompetent people to help him make those choices. And I watched an organization just completely suffer because of that, because he was fixated on the idea, what if I make the wrong choice? And I'd said, like, you just got to make the right choice most of the time, not all the time.
And I think that there's a temptation to believe that other humans joining your team will be a net positive, but my organization at times has been pretty big. We got upwards of I think I was responsible for the payrolls of 12 to 15 people at some point. However, right now we're at a phase where I think I'm only directly responsible, outside of partners like you, 3 people or whatever. And we are doing better work now because there are so few opportunities for something to muck up the works, right? A decision doesn't have to come from Brian's brain to his mouth and then go through, however many people, and then along the way, and then finally the result happens, and then Brian has to say, that's not at all what I wanted. And time's the only resource that matters, and our ability to move quickly and go, I think, is extraordinarily important and powerful.
Yeah, I think that we spend, I get my books back from my editor, right? And I get a lot of notes on my book, and I have to go through and do the edits. And I spend way more time anguishing having to sit down and do the edits than actually just doing them. And I find that if I sit down and set aside half a day, whatever, it goes by pretty quickly. And we do spend a lot of time, mental energy, postponing, debating, bargaining, whatever, etc. And it gets into some weird calculus we make on, what's the real cost going to be to do anything versus not. But I just coming back to the really effective people.
Sorry to interrupt. Side thread. On top of that, we never know which of these lottery tickets are going to really pay off, and so we just sort of have to intuit whether or not this is a good investment of the next 15 minutes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you don't know, and I don't, you also have the ability to figure out what's important, what's not important, that's quickly responding. I thought about that a couple times, occasionally I talk to Sam, but I don't like to bother him about stuff. And I get responses pretty quickly. If it's something longer, like, hey, can you read this? Give me a take on it, whatever. Yeah, it might take a few days, but I know that his method of triaging stuff is way more efficient than I am. And, I can think of a few people, that have to make so many decisions that I would probably find any one of them kind of crippling, yet they keep moving forward. And when it comes to, like you said, when you hire people, sometimes it can seem, oh, great, I just have this person now to do the thing. But if you don't trust them, or if they're not equipped to make those choices, then you didn't really hire somebody to make choices for you.
Right. It's not a net positive of taking something off your plate. It's a net negative, because now you're still thinking about the thing, but you're also worried about whether or not this new cog in the machine is going to do it right.
Yeah, I think for some startups, when they start thinking about, who they want to hire or how they want to grow, one of the things I've said, in some cases, the thing to really do is think about hiring an office, even if you're virtual, like a virtual office manager. Think about that, and that can be a person you just straight up pay, whatever. Then when you want to hire developer 2, developer 3, or person 2, person 3, because there's a lot of things that goes overhead with having to manage that, like payment, schedules, all this kind of stuff. And anytime you take on some other person in your org, you have to think about who's going to be managing that. And I've watched at OpenAI as they grew very fast, and sometimes things struggled because they couldn't bring in a high level person to go oversee a team. And that would be an issue there. So I think that, you want to have a very thin management, but you need to have somebody managing that.
The success coach in Salesman Guru, Brian Tracy, once I heard the words, this is all the way back to 1999. He said, identify the one part of your entire organization that you are absolutely essential to, and delegate literally everything else. And that is good advice, but not all of us intuit that part of delegating everything else means being comfortable saying you're hired and also you're fired, because those are emotional discussions. And I did my organization a disservice by not letting some people go earlier than I should have.
Yeah, and there's also, I've watched twice orgs suffer because, I knew a guy that had a bunch of these like magic summer camps, and it was like great business, really, really great business. He could do it, and he started to do them across at other schools and whatnot, but he could never scale past a certain point because he's afraid of hiring somebody and giving them kind of the full keys to the empire, because he's afraid that they would just take it and copy and replicate what he was going to do. Whereas he could have been doing this in multiple states. And so his fear was not that he was irreplaceable, but he didn't want to hire anybody who could potentially replace him. And eventually what happened, though, was other people went off and did bad versions or cheaper versions of what he did. And then he had to compete with them, where he had a big growth opportunity. We know of a podcast network.
It sounds like a case of he had the right idea and he correctly figured out that other people will eventually become competition, but he had the wrong idea that he used that as a reason to not bring on people internally, and then ended up facing it anyway.
He had sometimes somebody would get very capable and he would let them go, versus say, well, why don't I have them expand to Northern Florida? Why don't I have them expand there? That was the thing. The mistake that he made was he had opportunity to grow the empire, because some of these people, they didn't want to have to run it, but it was, they're like, hey, I have to start planning this, in spring, and I don't make enough money doing this. And they're looking at like, well, I like doing this. Either he can pay me more and I can do growth, or I have to just go create a competing business. And that's what he ended up doing, because he was this bottleneck. We saw that. We know a podcast empire where there was another person there was highly capable, whatever, and could have, helped double, triple, whatever there was. But that person perceived it as a threat to them instead of an opportunity for growth. So I'd say like that's the other end of it is that you put people in places where you don't need them, or you limit your growth because you feel threatened.
It is. Do you think, and this is something I'm just trying on for size right now, so maybe I'll pull back from this, but we were talking about a biz decision that I have to make, and your response kind of got me in the headspace of, just imagine your life is a movie. And in general, if you act heroically in that movie, in general, even if you get screwed over, even if somebody tries to, take you down a peg, or you lose money, or in general, being delightful, magnanimous, kind, and working hard, doing all the heroic things seems to pay off in the long run. I don't even know that I just spoke a sentence just now. Those are the thoughts I'm having right now.
I mean, the thing that I learned from somebody who used to be on this show like a week ago, and maybe on the show next week. One of the things I thought about was when
if we should so choose to add a third person to this podcast.
I came to the conclusion that I am going to try to do every decision in a way that assume that everything I ever do is public. Everything I ever did was public. Every email I sent somebody, everything eventually is public. Every conversation I have, at some point, somebody can make public. Try to function in the world assuming that that's going to be the case. knowing also the thing that I try to explain to people is I had a friend who worked in the entertainment industry, and I got along with them great, but they had a problem I knew on other productions and stuff where as soon as things got really, you know, difficult, whatever, they weren't
Twisted up, tangled,
they weren't the most loyal person, and they would be a person that would throw other people under the bus to protect their job because they came up in a way where that was that had happened to them, and that was the thing to do that. And they always had this justification for them, and I was trying to explain to them like, you don't get to be in the room when somebody's deciding who to hire. You're not in the room when they get to hire that, and when they decide not to hire you, you're not there to make the argument for your defense. And so, what your reputation is a thing that's behind you. It's a thing that's said behind you. It's not necessarily, or it's in front of you. It's in the room before you are, and you're never even in the room because they will make a decision. And you can be like, well, it was because of this. Like, they'll never hear it. They'll never know. You don't know. Like, I don't know what opportunities I lost because maybe I was a jerk to somebody or, wasn't loyal or forgot somebody, whatever. You never know what that is. And you can't worry too much about a reputation in the sense that, some people are going to have dumb ideas about you, whatever, and that's going to happen. I've had dumb ideas about people and found I was wrong about it.
A quick, very short side jag. I found a lot of benefit from, look, I did a controversial thing. I was one of the early pioneers of teaching magic on the internet. And some people disagree with that, and they wanted to conflate my actions with a moral argument. And luckily, I got to the more effective, useful space of like, they think I'm evil. They're just wrong. And then like just be comfortable with like some people will be wrong about their interpretation of you and your actions.
Yeah, and that to me, like that was when we had that conversation a long time ago about the to me it was a very clear thing because as a guy I write. I wrote magic books and DVDs, and I was producing DVDs by the thousands, and sometimes you have a thing that could sell in the several thousands. And I was mass distributing Magic Secrets. I had it in a DVD in a box, and people were like, well, that's different because it's not like it's just on YouTube. I'm like, I did it with you. I'd be like, you have to take an effort to watch a Brian Brushwood video. If mine was in a public library, like what the threshold is the intention. The difference between somebody who's just doing pure exposure for pure exposure is find out how this trick is done in 2 minutes, and that's all you did. And I think that for that, it was a very clear thing to understand, what the right thing was, because you could say, okay, if you can explain how this fits and this doesn't fit, then I will listen to your argument. But if you can't, and it's like AI generated art, like if you can explain to me why a synthesizer, which uses samples from like the early sense from live recorded samples of an artist once that are now used 1 billion times forever, why that's okay, but AI generative stuff isn't. It's like,
well, and that is something that I find, for example, even the simple way I am now able to express why what I've done and continue to do with magic, teaching it, making it available free, it boiled down to the difference between exposure and teaching. Teaching, the lesson is complete and now you can perform it. That is teaching. Exposure is you have an itch and you just want me to scratch it. And now it's not possible for you to do the trick, but at least you don't have that itch anymore. That simple framework took, 7-8 years for me to really get to. So when it comes to AI generated art and the discussions that are being had, I think right now we're in the intuitive phase of the morality of AI. And it's going to take another, 3 to 5 years for enough people to come up with the simple statements and some of it will be demonstrating young, talented people who never could have told their stories if it weren't for the help of AI. Some of it will be people who do eloquent turns of phrases that and metaphors that land and resonate with people. But it does kind of feel like the AI argument is weirdly reminiscent of the "is it okay to teach magic on the internet" argument.
Yeah, and because it gets into who owns what, who is the harbinger of this. There's an argument being used, and we get the sidetrack, but like, hey, because they trained on a bunch of public content. I'm like, okay, so if you're saying it was only trained on licensed content, are you then okay with it? And that's my test for people about this. Are you then okay with generative AI? And you get that, well, okay, so it's not about whether or not this is open source or public domain or fair use or whatever. It's about something else.
Yeah,
But back.
one last lap around the parallels to magic. Magicians in general, none of us created most of the deceptions that we use in our art. We inherited them, and the progenitors of it, the creators of it, there is no way to go back and find out who invented what or whatever. We can trace pretty well who made which thing famous, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they own it or have the rights to it. And so as a result, there's this internet meme where it's like one stick figure hands another stick figure, hey, here's a box, I made it. And then the stick figure says, you made it? And then one frame of it just holding it. And then by the end frame, it says, I made this, and I feel like that's what happens in magic that we need to be aware is a tendency to do. And I think that's a bit of tangentially related to the challenges of explaining why AI is only going to make more of everything for everyone.
Yeah, I'm going to probably, when I get the chance, I'm going to write a blog post, and it's basically the premise is the kind of if we talked about before, the IKEA effect in generative AI, in that, the IKEA effect is that when you spend time and energy on a thing, you feel more invested in it.
Right.
And when a lot of AIs, a lot of people kind of got a little bit better with image prompts when they saw really, really skillful image prompts and looked at like, oh, this is a work and I can't do this, by myself. And I think that for other forms of generative AI, when people realize, no, skill still comes in there, and that if you put time and craft, if you spend all day to create a great song and you have a great song, that's going to feel good. You're going to feel invested in it. And you're going to feel, that you did a work.
Can I tell you the way I think of it is this is so dumb. I think of it as Times New Roman, Comic Sans, and Papyrus. 3 fonts that everybody found very attractive, but as everybody used them, they became synonymous with low effort. And the moment you saw something in Times New Roman, you knew you couldn't even be bothered to change the font. My God. When you saw Comic Sans, like, it's still a punchline. And Papyrus, like, we're watching James Cameron try to erase Papyrus from Avatar. But sorry, my guy, that was a low effort decision and you shouldn't have done it. That is what is going to happen with AI. As we see art, we're instantly going to know whether or not it was high effort, whether or not, and we're going to keep changing the words that we use to describe it, but ultimately all we want to know is that a human on the other side of this worked very hard on it. And whether that's working hard on the prompts to create it or working very hard with a talented team of people to portray a vision and coordinate incredible, set pieces that have 300 extras all running around to mimic a disaster or whatever. Those little things, you can't fake effort is what it boils down to. And AI is never, I shouldn't say never. When AI does tackle that, then we really have a problem. But I don't expect that to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I do. I think it's going to get scary fast. But I think that we're going to come back to where you pay a ticket to go see a symphony. Watch John Williams. John Williams go perform, and I see him on stage waving his wand at everybody. I kind of think they could probably do without that guy there. Probably could do without that guy there. Like, put a TV screen
they
up
could
there.
quite literally put a 6-foot-tall metronome there, and it would be just fine.
I think, and I get it. I'm not saying a conductor is actually the real work of the conductor is everything that happens before they set foot on stage.
Right.
But the saying is that's we will be conductors. We'll become like, a lot of, we talked about this before in hip hop, using these samples, using these tracks that accepted that a long time ago. It's about brand. It's the thing of like, okay, it's not just the thing that makes the song. It's who chooses the album. It's who you meet in person. You know, I've got Brandon Sanderson's collection, Brandon Sanders Kickstarter collection, $40 million book launch on Kickstarter. $40 million. Okay, the guy made $40 million. I bought all of his books. Brian, how many Brandon Sanderson books have I read?
I bet you haven't even read the ones you've just bought.
0, exactly. I have read none of them. Why did I buy them? You know, I've listened to the interviews and I like the kid. You know, he's a sharp guy. He's a hardworking, sharp guy.
He gets it. He gets it. And whether or not the product itself is or isn't what, you know, you would hope for, the idea of what he's doing, you want to support. Like,
yeah. Well, I'm sure though they're great and they'll make me hate myself. I am, you know, but my point is just a time. But anyway, my point is like, yeah, it's like if there was, you know, the robot 54321 writer put up a Kickstarter and generated 5 books and charged $300 for that they say is as good as Brandon. I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy that.
right.
I'm not, you know, I'm not as excited about that. You know, if they're great and it's $3, then maybe, but for a lot of stuff, I like that there's a human involved.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah. Game said, like, I buy DVDs where they're. I bought Godzilla -1, even though it was free on Netflix, because damn, I want that to be a success. I want that team to go make more stuff. I want them doing Star Wars. I want whatever. So I'm like, I was committed to helping make that thing a success. Like, you know, movies, I will go buy movies, even though like the directors need my money, because I want to show, I really want to reward effort.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like if we chase this thread, we're gonna go long.
Yeah.
Do you have any content you've been listening to or watching?
Let me pop up my YouTube. My routine is I have to find the YouTube video to watch before lunch, you know, while you eat, and then I have to watch some YouTube videos when I go to bed at night. You know, I've been watching a lot of stuff on 3D printing because you know I've got the Bamboo.
I'll tell you what. While you're doing that, have we talked about The Happiness Curve yet by Jonathan Rauch?
I've heard of. No.
It's great. And full disclosure, I'm 49, about to turn 50, and as irrational as I know it is, for some reason those odometer years seem to they float in the back of your head and you think about things. And the Happiness Curve, now keep in mind this is not a scientific journal, this is a journalist writing about the phenomenon. Things I didn't know. I didn't know that orcas go through midlife malaise. I didn't know that orangutans go through midlife malaise. I did not know that essentially there's a middle-aged puberty that somehow our culture and society has decided should be a hilarious punchline. And as a result, society says things that they would never say to a child who goes to their parents saying, I don't know what's happening. I get angry very quickly, and I overreact. What's happening? We don't say, oh, you must be having the puberty. What's next? You're going to get zits? There's a reason that the stereotype of the red sports car, the dressing younger than you used to, or, you know, some people full on do have a midlife crisis and, you know, engage in infidelity and end up dating somebody younger than they otherwise would have. But there's a much larger segment of the population that quite simply just is bummed and doesn't quite know why and is embarrassed to even share it with their spouse. Reading about this phenomenon was, I mean, it was great, Andrew. And it happened to be on a vacation that I didn't have time for, that I didn't have money for, but I had obligations and had to do it. And it was really, really good.
I'm going to look this up.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah. I really, I used to joke that like, I've been going through a midlife crisis since I was 15. So I never really reached like any particular age or point where, you know, 30 was a little bit like, what am I doing? You know, where's life going with me? 40 was great. Like 40 was just this this finally, I felt like I was, I tell
Finally,
people,
your
like,
ship came in, and
yeah, I go,
Yeah.
I tell people, like, everything interesting about me happened after 40. 50 for me, was still at OpenAI when I hit 50, and it was, at a good point, book publishing, whatever. But I knew that I wanted to go create something. I knew that there was sort of like I wasn't able to scratch an itch there. So,
well,
but I do get to that. Yeah.
what one of the core points is like all humans, and it's men and women, kind of have this recalibration phase where they ask, "Is this all?" Different versions of the same question.
Yeah.
And what I love about this book is that it's most of the interesting points are driven by the work of economists who have rich data sets, because there are tests that psychologists use to test for wisdom, which is not a thing I thought was possible. But then when you hear wisdom clearly defined, you're like, oh yeah, you can test for that. And they have rich data sets going back for decades. But the U-shaped curve is basically when you are young, say under 30, your whole life you tend to overestimate your level of achievement, the level of impact you'll make in your field of choice, and then you kind of hit peak obligations. And during that time, you do some recalibrating, but then something wonderful happens. You do become more pessimistic at around our age, at which point surprises still happen. And again, your mileage may vary, but surprises still happen. But when surprises happen, they tend to be surprises that make you happier than you would expect. So basically, what we see is even as people age out of their bodies, contract cancer, Parkinson's, or whatever, their sense of self-worth and their happiness with their being still goes up, and it never stops. And being in the middle of the trough, at the age of 49, doing my best to figure out how to keep the fucking lights on and all this stuff, just knowing that actuarial tables exist that all say the same thing, like it only gets better from here, was just one of the best messages I could possibly receive. If anybody hearing this doesn't want to go straight to the audiobook, then at least listen to the interview on The Political Orphanage with Jonathan Rauch, because that's a pretty good kind of overview, because he's doing a book tour. And then I listened to that podcast, then I listened to the whole audiobook, and then I went back and re-listened to that podcast again. I think it's a very important and underreported message that once you see the data sets, it's like, yeah, no, it's a real thing.
That's helpful. I mean, it is that we spend early part of our life setting up crazy expectations and then running against the rocks of reality in life, and sometimes resetting those, or sometimes thinking that we're wrong or broken or something, and then figuring things out there. So the happiest guy I know is my dad. My dad's 80 and he's 81.
Well, and
he
per the book, it's like you're not unaware that you're watching your body deteriorate, but you're just happier every day. It's really wild.
Yeah. Well, my pick is a YouTube channel I've really grown to like, because I think his explanations are great, and that is the Action Lab, which is very cool stuff about science and chemistry and stuff. I'm gonna admit that I learned a lot of things I just sort of assumed I knew. And did you know diamagnetism versus paramagnetism? Okay. Do you know that every object is affected by a magnetic field, and it can either be repelled, attracted, or basically paramagnetic pick up the field? And so if I held up a magnet to this Rubik's Cube, there's actually going to be a very, very tiny repulsive force. Very, very tiny, but there's actually a repulsive force between them.
I did not know that.
Well, it's a thing we learned in physics in high school or college, and then we forgot because it wasn't relevant and whatever, and we just think about solely as magnets being attractive. And you think about that, every magnet is in theory an anti-gravity thing. It's just the repulsive force is so weak, it just doesn't do enough to do anything.
Yeah.
But there are neat experiments where like you take like a thing on, let's say, a pivot, whatever, right? A very, 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 like, very loose axle, whatever. You put a frog or something, that's not going to be magnetic, ferromagnetic inside of a container, and you hold up a powerful magnet, like a neodymium magnet, and it will push the thing away.
I guess that sounds true and right, if for no other reason than because, like, in my day-to-day life, I very rarely think about the gigantic electromagnetic field that is created by the core of the Earth spinning a giant liquid ball of nickel. However, I do know that a compass will point one way. Those fundamental aspects, that sounds like a fun channel. I'll check it out.
Lot of great stuff in there. Does stuff. He got one of the big in magic, we've known these things. I've got a material here. A guy named Luber Fiedler had come up with a lot of great magic inventions, and one of the things he realized was you could use a lenticular lens to do a lot of cool things, like make things disappear and stuff.
Got it.
And then decades later, that got rediscovered as invisibility shields and stuff, which was sort of adorable. Oh, this thing is like, I've been carrying this thing in my wallet forever because it's a fun little demo. But anyhow, he got a giant one of these and, went out and like put it up in a field and put it in real life locations. Like, yeah, it looks like a invisibility shield. And so really fun channel. So that is the Action Lab.
Those fundamental reframings, like scale is a good one, or depth. Like, for example, the trophy that we give away when we do the Founders Day picnic, it's like a Stanley Cup. We're keeping it here forever. Like, the magic trick that was performed on me was Ryer sent me a sketch of it. And I'm like, that looks like an awesome trophy. I did not know that he also found out my height was 5'7" and made it exactly 1 inch taller than my body. And so as a result, it was magic that the exact same thing that I saw and was medium impressed with suddenly became hugely impressive purely by scale.
Very interesting. So my pick, Action Lab. Your pick, which I've already put on Audible and looking forward to listen to.
Yeah, the happiness curve. It's great. Cool, man. All right. Well, how's it been, Andrew?
It's been after.
Nailed it. Yeah, I think you're gonna like that book a lot. I may give it a second listen.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
All right. Now I have to go do adult things.
All right. Well, have fun. Later.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Got this. I don't know what this is, but you got this.
Bye.